Good evening and welcome. We are learning all about Davar Charif. And Davar Charif is something that is spicy. And that's when I mean spicy in halacha. When I say Charif, I don't mean spicy. I mean it has a sharp taste. Okay, and again, sharp in terms of halacha. Okay, so examples of this are garlic, onions, radishes, spicy peppers, pickles, we got olives, lemons, smoked fish. And we'll see a number of the standard kashrut principles that we've learned so far and how they apply here but are more strictly enforced. So we've learned before this concept of a ben yomo. Ben yomo is a plate or a bowl or a utensil that has been, or a pot that's been used in the last 24 hours. Something which is eino ben yomo is something which hasn't been used in the last 24 hours. And when we had that concept of nat bar nat, which we spent a long time learning last week, which was, for example, I cook my pasta in a meat pot which hasn't been used in the last 24 hours, and then I can have that with dairy for Sfaradim lechatchila, for Ashkenazim b'diavad after the fact. Okay, here we're going to learn that when it comes to a davar charif, even without the knife cutting, and the knife is another issue, but let's just say I place these items into a pot and cook them in such a pot. So let's say, for example, I've got onions and I'm sauteing them in a meat pot. Even if that meat pot has not been used in 24 hours, the onions, because of their charifut, because of their sharpness, they do something transformative to it. So all those leniencies I talked about last week don't apply. So it says here in Chulin, Amar Chizkiya Mishum Abaye, Hilchata, the following halacha, Tznon, a radish, if I used a meat knife to cut those onions, I cannot then use those raw onions, or even if it's not cooked, those raw onions can't be eaten with kutach. And I remember kutach was this dish of whey and flour. Okay, so because it's a dairy dish, I can't eat it. So those onions take the meat from the knife and become meat. V'hanemile tznon. This only applies to a radish. The agav chorfei bala, because due to its sharpness, it absorbs the meat or the fat on the knife. Okay, so here we learn that's anything which is a davar charif, so radish is just my example, but it could be onions or garlic. If I cut them with a meat knife, even if that meat knife hadn't been used for 24 hours, because of its charifut, because it's a davar charif, because it has a sharp flavor, it awakens the flavor from the knife, and those onions become meat. Okay? Therefore, because they are meat, I cannot have them with dairy. Unlike a case where I would cut vegetables, any other vegetables, let's say cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever, with a meat knife, those cucumbers and tomatoes could be eaten with cheese, lechatchila for Sfaradim, b'diavad for Ashkenazim after this. So ideally for Sfaradim, after the fact for Ashkenazim. Here, we're saying that's not the case. For Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, there's a problem here that those onions become meat. So far, so good? Good. So let's carry on. Rashi explains, Hilkach, therefore, dagim sha'alu beka'ara mutar ochlam bekutach. Therefore, fish that was placed in a bowl is permitted to eat with kutach, with this dairy dish. Kadamar de'ein nat notein tam haba min hamamash. Because here there's no imparting of taste that comes from a tangible substance. Ela notein tam haba min notein tam is just a classic case of nat, bar nat, of one taste going to the other taste. So it's the meat pot does not, or the meat bowl does not impart this flavor. The stam ke'ara mekanchin ota, because we assume that the average bowl is clean, it's been wiped off. Mishuman hakarush aleha, mishumius. No one's going to leave a dirty bowl in there and then put the fish in it. That would be disgusting. Aval lasakin, but regarding a knife, then I've got issues. And the question is this specifically because it's a knife, or is it because it's the spice? So he explains, Pe'amim shashmanunit karush alav ve'eno nikar ukeshechotech betznon have notein tam haba min hamamash. Sometimes the residue is congealed on it and is not recognizable. And when one cuts a radish, the knife, is notein tam. It imparts the flavor that comes from the actual food. So therefore, the meat fat goes into the radish because of its sharpness. And he says here, ve'od mishum churfei balatfei midagim harotchim ve'agav duchka de sakina palit sakina ubalatznon. In addition, due to its sharpness, it absorbs more than the case of the hot fish, and due to the pressure of the knife expels the meat flavor and the radish absorbs it. So here, and again, I want to be careful because there's a few concepts being wielded together here that we have to understand. Number one, okay, I'll make sure I got my thumbs up. Number one is that there is this concept of charifut, of sharpness of the onions. Number two, there's duchka de sakina, the pressure of the knife. That also awakens the flavor from inside the knife to go and impart into the radish. And number three, I have the possibility that I didn't really clean the knife properly. Okay, which is who was washing the dishes? Was it me washing the dishes, or was it one of the kids washing the dishes? And God bless them. Some of my kids, I know I'm not on video, so I'll be careful. Some of the kids aren't the best at washing the dishes. We'll just leave it at that. So you got to be careful. Was it a clean knife that you were using? So let's say I don't have a knife involved, and I'm just using the back of a spoon, and the spoon is clean. There's still an issue there because the onion or the radish or the garlic has this sharp flavor which awakens the flavor, okay, of the meat spoon, even if the meat spoon hasn't been used in 24 hours. When I add in this concept of duchka de sakina, of the pressure of the knife, also awakens. I got this double reason. And then the third one, which shouldn't happen, which is perhaps it wasn't as clean as it should be. Okay? So that's the three things going on there. All right? So Rashi's first reason there is that a knife is different than other utensils, since there is sometimes leftover residue on the knife that would cause transfer of flavor to the sharp item. Rashi's second reason is that regardless of whether the knife is clean or not, the pressure of cutting a sharp item with a sharp knife causes a transfer of flavor. The practical halachic difference between these two reasons arises in a case where the knife was wiped, cleaned, and rinsed well from any residual food prior to being used for cutting a sharp food. According to Rashi's first reason, it would not be forbidden to eat the sharp food together with dairy, since the knife would be clean, while according to the second reason, it would still be forbidden due to the pressure from the knife on the radish. And the radish would have the status of meat, since its sharpness elicits the meat flavor from the knife. And that's the practical halachic concern. We're not concerned about dirty knives. We're concerned that the combination of the pressure of the knife and the sharpness of the radish or the onion will combine, and therefore we forbid using those onions, if they were cut with a meat knife, to be eaten with dairy. And here's how Maran Shulchan Aruch says: Snon, a radish, or silka, or even a beet, shechatcham besakin, that were cut with a knife, shel basar, ben yomo, with a meat knife that had been used in the last 24 hours, or she'eno mekunach, or was not cleaned, asur le'ochlam bechalav. It is forbidden to eat them with dairy. And the Gra comments that by offering these two scenarios, the Shulchan Aruch appears to accept both positions brought by Rashi, as condition A corresponds to Rashi's second reason, that the sharpness of the Davar Charif creates the taste transfer, and condition B corresponds to the first reason, that we are concerned with the residue on the knife. Okay, based on this, it seems that even if the knife is clean, cutting a Davar Charif with a meat knife will cause the food to have the status of meat, and therefore cannot be eaten with dairy. And the same is true. If I use a dairy knife, I cannot eat that with meat. Okay. Now, all that's been said, that's with if the knife had been used in the last 24 hours. Okay, because it said there it was ben yomo, within the last 24 hours. What happens if it wasn't in the last 24 hours? Let's say I can't remember the last time I used my knife, and we already explained if you can't remember, we said then we take it as if the stam, the normal case is it hasn't been used. Okay? What is the status? Okay? Or what? So you see here, and we'll read the notes here. What is the halacha if one cuts a davar charif, this sharp taste, with a knife that is more than 24 hours old? For example, what happens when one cuts an onion with a meat knife where it is unknown when it was last used? Okay? Whose status is that of eino ben yomo, hasn't been used in the last 24 hours, as we've learned previously. Alternatively, what is the halacha if one fried an omelet with onions in a meat frying pan that was not used in the last 24 hours? Do the onions in these cases have the status of meat? And you won't be surprised to know that the Rishonim dispute this question based on a difference of opinion of how to interpret the following sources. A Mishnah and Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah state that a chiltit, a type of herb, is forbidden when cut by a eino ben yomo knife, a knife which hadn't been used in the last 24 hours, of a non-Jew, which is presumed to have absorbed non-kosher flavor at one point due to its sharp taste. Okay, so it says here, Elu devarim shel ovdei kochavim, asurin ve'ein isurin isur hana'ah. These things are prohibited, but we're not prohibited from deriving benefit. And these are they, a koret shel chiltit, and a sliver of chiltit, a type of herb. Says the Gemara there, my timer, what's the reason? Mishum de mafsekele besakina, because they were sliced with a knife. And that, presumably, that knife had some non-kosher residue. Afalgav de amar noten tam nifgam mutar. And even though we've established normally that when it's more than 24 hours, the flavor imparted is negative, and therefore it should be permissible. Agav chorfe de chiltata machlele shamnunita v'havale kenoten tam nishvach v'asur. Here, because of the sharpness of the herb, the act of slicing it with a knife sweetens it, which means it enhances the taste of the non-kosher residue, and therefore it takes a ta'am lifgam, a negative taste, and makes it ta'am lishvach, an enhanced flavor, and therefore, since it's giving an enhanced flavor, it is asur, it is prohibited, it is forbidden. Okay, so it's an interesting thing here that we say because the charifut, the sharpness of the herb or whatever is being used, it transforms a negative taste and makes it a positive taste. So basically now we want to argue, is that specifically about herbs like chiltit? Or is that true of all Davar Charif as well? And the Bet Yosef, and again, remember we talked about this, the Bet Yosef is Maran Rav Yosef Cairo. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch, but his major work, which we all know, but his major work was the Bet Yosef, his magnum opus commentary on the Torah. He writes, "V'katav b'sefer haTruma, da'afilu ein hasakin ben yomo." Even if the knife is more than 24 hours since it was last used, asur, it is forbidden. The agav churfei tznon or yerek mechalia v'have lishvach kedamrin and gabe koret shel chiltit. Since, why is it forbidden? Since it is due to the sharpness of the radish or the vegetable that the taste is enhanced, we say concerning the silver of chiltit. We're basically saying it has a transformative effect. It's magic. That flavor goes from bad to good. And that's the way the Sefer Teruma on the Ashkenazic Rishonim says. Katav Maharam Rottenberg, the Maharam of Rottenberg says, Davka bekoret shel chiltit amrinan, de churfei masuri le'leshvach. We only say this regarding this special herb of chiltit. V'lo b'shum davar acher charif klal. And we don't say this about other spicy foods. V'chein Rabbeinu Yechiel mipariz v'harbe gedolim shavim lahatir. And so other rabbis such as Rabbeinu Yechiel of Paris and many other Rishonim, great Torah scholars, also permit other types of charif. So how does the Shulchan Aruch rule? He does a stam and a yesh omrim, a normal and a those who say. And we always say, well, hold on, I'll just explain to you first. Tznon or silka, if I've got a radish or a beet, shechatcham b'sakin shel basar ben yomo, that was cut with a knife which had been used in the last 24 hours, or she'eno mekunach, or was not rubbed off properly, asur le'ochlam b'chalav, you can't eat them with dairy, ad she'yitol mimakom ha'chatach kedei netilat makom. Then you have to cut off the place that the knife touched that vegetable as much as, well, we're going to see how much you have to cut off. What area around the knife do you have to cut off? We'll see that. Hold your horses on that. And the same is true. There are those who say that the law is true also if it's more than 24 hours old and even if it's clean. Not just if it's dirty, even if it's cleaned. So whenever the Shulchan Aruch presents an opinion as the standard, that's the stam, and then cites the opposing opinion as a yesh omrim, some say, it is often assumed that halacha follows the first opinion. If so, then a davar charif cut by an eno ben yomon knife, which hadn't been used in the last 24 hours for meat or dairy, would remain parv, except for this special herb called chiltit. This is, in fact, the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch in the continuation of the Siman with regard to crushing spices, which are also considered a sharp flavor, where he only discusses a ben yomah utensil as creating an issue and does not cite the second opinion that if it's more than 24 hours old, then it would have the same status. He says here, tavlin shenidocha b'meducha shel basar ben yomah asur lochlam b'chalav. If you were to grind spices in a meat pestle and mortar, it would be forbidden to eat them with dairy. When it was ben yomah, been used in the last 24 hours. Had it not been used in the last 24 hours, perhaps, as we're trying to explain, it would be permitted. So, how are we going to make the bottom line decision? Is there a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim on this? Yes, there is. Once again, the Rama says, "V'yesh omrim afilu eno ben yomah." There are those who say, even if it's more than 24 hours old, you cannot grind the meat in the spices in the meat pestle and mortar. And so therefore, from what we've seen, we might present a situation where the position for Sfaradim might only be an issue when it's in the last 24 hours, i.e. Ben Yomo. But for Ashkenazim, it's a problem no matter what. You can never use a meat knife to cut onions and then use those onions for dairy. As Sfaradim, they're only concerned if it's been used in the last 24 hours. So it says here, based on the ruling of the Ramah, it seems clear that the practical halacha for Ashkenazim should be that in the case of a Davar Charif, cut by a knife which had been used even 2 or 3, 4 or 5 days ago, or cooked in a pot which hadn't been used for several days, it has the status of the knife or pot, no matter what. So you use a meat pot, you use a meat knife, and you don't know when it was last used. If you're Ashkenazic, you're out of luck. With regard to Sfaradim, one would think that since the Shulchan Aruch appears to rule in favor of the first opinion, the Davar Charif would remain Parv. However, a number of Sephardic Achronim, such as the Kaf HaChaim, rule in accordance with the second most stringent opinion, except for cases of great need, and this is the ruling of the Sefer HaKashrut for Sfaradim. He says here, Ubesakin she'eno ben yomo, uvehefsed merubeh, uvshat hadachak, hamachal kulo mutar. When is it permitted? Only if there is a great financial loss or a pressing need. Like, say, for example, a major caterer or a wedding or entire community or something along those lines, but not for just, I made a mistake. So therefore, I might think that's the Sephardic approach. But I want to tell you something, let you into a bit of a secret. You're listening carefully here? The Kaf HaChaim, everyone loves him, a big Baghdadi rabbi. But guess what? He was machmir and concerned, and Jerry knows this well from learning Kaf HaChaim on Sunday mornings. The Kaf HaChaim, if he can follow an Ashkenazic position, he's going to follow it every single time. That's not necessarily the approach for all. Hacham Ovadia Yosef says that's not the case. And the Sfaradim may always be lenient. Why? Because Hacham Ovadia Yosef holds, we hold like Maran. And if Maran says there's no reason to be strict, there's no reason to be strict. He says as follows. The Chochmat Adam writes that even though the Ramah holds that one should be stringent considering a Davar Charif, even if it has not been used in the last 24 hours, nevertheless, Mikol Makom, Dat HaShulchan Aruch hi, rak le'inyan isur yesh lahachmir b'chol Davar Charif. Afilu be'eno ben yomo. The only time we have to be careful is when it's something non-kosher. Let's say that was a non-kosher knife used to cut those spices or vegetables or garlics or onions. Aval be'inyan basar v'chalav, with regard to issues of meat and milk, dato lahakel. Then there's room to be lenient. Kivan ikatarke detiyufta. Because then we say that there are two redeeming factors. Not bar, not dehetera. It's one flavor going to another flavor which is permitted. V'gam notein tam nifgam, and it's also a flavor which is meant to be something which is giving out a negative flavor. V'chein tiretz hagon hakreitiu pleiti, and this is also an answer given by one of the rabbis called the Kreitiu Pleiti. Shafir yesh l'smocha kol achronim laskrim le'el lehakel, and therefore one should be lenient. So again, people ask me, what's the position in Seattle? Do we follow the Kaf HaChaim, which is learned every Sunday morning for the last 40 years? Do we learn Yabia Omer? What's the position? And I'll tell you, it is like Yabia Omer, but not because it's Yabia Omer. That's just our position. We follow Shulchan Aruch, straight read. That's the way it's understood. So according to the Hachmat Adam and Rav Ovadia, the Shulchan Aruch is lenient concerning onions cut by a meat or dairy knife. as is evident from the fact that the second more stringent opinion is labeled only as Yesh Omrim, some say. The Shulchan Aruch only writes elsewhere that one must be stringent concerning an Eino Ben Yomah knife, concerning non-kosher issues, where the consideration of nat bar nat does not apply, since a real prohibition is involved where I'm worried about that non-kosher taste coming in. Okay, so let's just explain and summarize before we move on. Okay, I have Davar Charif. What is my concern with Davar Charif? Is it the knife and the pressure the knife creates? Yes, that's also an issue. So therefore, I want to know, when was that knife last used? For Sfaradim, if the knife had been used in the last 24 hours, I'm in trouble, and that knife can only be, if the knife is meat, I can only use those onions or those herbs with meat. But if it's more than 24 hours, or I don't know, I can have those onions or that food with anything, with dairy. What's the issue? If it was used for non-kosher, if I used a non-kosher knife, then even if it's more than 24 hours old, problem for Sfaradim, because I'm worried that the flavor of the non-kosher food is going to be passed on, and therefore I'm not going to be lenient with that. For Ashkenazim, and for the way the Kaf HaChaim explains, the Shulchan Aruch, even if the knife had been used several days ago, if it's a meat knife, you cannot use those onions or that garlic or those herbs for anything with dairy. It doesn't matter when it was last used, because we consider the flavor is returned. So far, so good. Questions on that? Okay, we're good to move on. We're now carrying on with cooking a Davar Charif in a meat or dairy pot. So all that was when it was cold. What about cooking it? Although in the rest of the class we will focus mainly on the case of a Davar Charif cut by a knife, we should note that a Davar Charif, even if not cut by a knife, but cooked in a dairy or meat pot, will also have the status of the pot, even if the pot is not Ben Yomah. This is explained by the Rama. Aval im hayad davar charif kagon shebishlu devarim charifim bekeli shel basar afilu eino ben yomah o shedachu tavlin b'medoch shel basar im bashlu b'chalav oser afilu b'diavad ad ika shishim neged habasar habalua bahem. But if it was a sharp food where the food wasn't just cut, but it was cooked in a meat pot, then if that pot hadn't been used in 24 hours, or those spices hadn't been used in 24 hours, if one cooked it in milk, it is forbidden, that mixture, even b'diavad, after the fact, unless there is 60 times the meat absorbed in them. And I told you, these calculations are very complicated, and you need to talk to me afterwards if you've got an issue with that, because that one is a little bit more of a complicated issue. Now, here we're trying to figure out, let's say I cut an onion with a meat knife, and I just realized, oh no, I cut the onion with a meat knife. How much of that onion, and here's a good one for charts and surface areas and surface volumes, how much of that onion is now not allowed to be used? Is it the whole onion? Is it something called kadei netilah, an amount taken, which is considered the thickness of a thumb? Or is it kadei klipa, the amount that can be peeled, which is the thinnest surface that can be removed? Okay? The Ran cites the Ra'avad, who holds that a kadei netilah is absorbed, that you have to remove as much as a thumb's worth. Whereas the Rashba says, if I cut an onion, the whole onion is gone. Says here the Ran. Katav ha'ra'avad b'teka'ama asur stama mashma de lo sageh b'klipa de mishum charifuto ולחותו בולע ונעשה יותר מכדי קליפה וצריך נטילת מקום. It's not enough to just remove the outer layer. I need to remove as much as a thumb's worth. V'chein dat hara'ah, and that's the position of the ra'ah. Aval harashba katav, but the Rashba wrote, since it doesn't give a measurement like it does for vegetables like cucumbers, it must be the spicy, because of the spiciness or the sharpness of the vegetable, the whole onion is forbidden. Okay? The Rosh holds a different opinion. The Rosh is more lenient and he says, no, it's only a klipa's worth, the thin peel. Okay, so I see here, ra'avad, it's a thumb's worth. Get your thumb out, try to get that measurement going. It's about 3/4 of an inch. I got the Rashba, it depends how thick your thumb is, I guess. The Rashba, that it's the whole thing, and I got the Rosh, it's just the outer layer which is touched. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the opinion of the Ra'avad and the Ra'ah. The one must cut off the thickness of Kedei Netilah around the location of the cut with the knife, which is about 2 centimeters. I said it's about 3/4 of an inch. And then one must eat the rest of the food with the other type. The Ramah, though, rules like the Rashba, that the entire food should not be used with the other type. Lechatchila, and only b'diavad, one may cut off the thickness of Kedei Netilah. Okay, so he says as follows. Tznon or silka, I've got the beet or the radish, shechatcham b'sakin shel basar ben yomo, which was cut with a meat knife that had been used in the last 24 hours, or she'eno mekunach, or it hadn't been cleaned. Asur le'ochlam b'chalav, it is forbidden to eat that with dairy, ad sheyitol mimakom hechatach kedei netilat makom, until you take from the place that you cut the onion as much as this netilat makom. Shehu ko'ovei etzba, which is the thickness of a finger, or shit amenu v'lo yeh bo ta'am basar, or until he tastes it to make sure there's no meat taste in it. She'az mutar b'hadacha, and then it would be permissible through rinsing it off. So he gives 2 options there. One, cut off a finger's worth either side. The other one being to taste it, make sure there's no meat taste, and rinse it off. V'yesh omrim, and there are those who say, says the Ramah, she'im chatach tznon b'sakin shel isur, if you used a non-kosher knife, kulo asur, all of it is forbidden. V'chein im chatcho b'sakin shel basar, and similar if one cut with a meat knife, asur kulo b'chalav, all of it would be prohibited with dairy. V'chein nohagin lechatchila, and this is how we act ideally. Aval b'diavad, after the fact, ein le'isur rak kedei netilah, then it's only forbidden up to the netilah, the finger worth. V'chol zeh im chatach hatznon atzmo, that is if you cut the radish itself. Aval im chatach hayerek sh'al atznon, if you cut the green part of the radish, the leaves of it, ein lachush, there's no concern, become she'ein nimtza liknot rak hachotchim b'sakin, nohagin liknoto lahatir yedei netilat makom. Okay, and why is that? He explains that the top of the radish is no concern. In a place where one can only find one's sharp foods like this, cut by a knife to purchase, the custom is to purchase it and permit it through taking off the kedei netilah. So that's the only thing. Let's say you can only buy these sharp foods, and it just comes in this, not in the supermarket, but it comes in the store like that, or it comes in the farmer's market like that. You can buy it, but then you have to cut off a finger's worth on either sides of it. Shulchan Aruch, im chatach ba shumanu betzalim v'karishin, If one cut garlic, onions, or leeks with it, or chrein, which is horseradish, uchayotze bahem medarim hacharifim, these types of spicy things, uperot chamutzim, or pickles, v'dagim elokim, or salted fish, dinam shaveh lechatech botzonen. It's the same din, it's the same law as cutting radishes. Mikol makom, mutar le'echol mirkachot charifim shel ovdei gelulim, don zangvil uchayotze bo, desh lem kelim miuchadim lekach o tulshin oto. It's still, you're permitted to buy sharp spices belonging to non-Jews, such as ginger and the like, as they use special utensils for it, or they detach it by hand without a utensil. Okay, so we see here, we're adding here all those different types of things which might be considered a Davar Charif. Based on this, one should not cut a Davar Charif with a knife, a non-kosher knife, which has been used in the last 24 hours, or with a ben yoma meat knife to eat with dairy or vice versa, even if the knife is clean and cold. Yosef confirms that this is the halacha even for Sfaradim, who are normally lenient about nat bar nat. He says, concerning a radish or beet that was cut with a ben yoma meat knife, it's forbidden to eat them with dairy until one takes kedei netilah, this finger worth amount, from the place of the cut. It is about the thickness of a finger, or one tastes it and does not have the taste of meat, in which case it's permitted with rinsing. In cases of need where one desires that the onions or other Davar Charif remain parv, but only has meat or dairy knife, one may kasher the knife to become parv in the following manner described in the Shulchan Aruch. Now it's important to note that normally we don't recommend this, of taking a meat knife and making it dairy or vice versa in normal scenarios. This is like one of those, you can use it, but you can only use it twice in your life type thing. It's not every time you should be switching back and forth, because if you do that, you'll end up not realizing it's something meat or is it dairy. So he says here, sakin yashan, you got an old knife, ben gadol, ben katan, whether it's a large or a small knife, hanikach me'haved kochavim, which is purchased from a non-Jew. But if you want to use it for cold, if there are no holes, you can thrust it into the ground 10 times. You ever seen this? It's really cool. And you have to make sure that when you thrust it into the ground, it has to be really hard ground. And therefore you shouldn't do it in a place which has already been thrust a different time. And even to cut a Davar Charif with it, such as radish, this is sufficient. Then he adds, some say,
that means that
some say that the sharpening is effective only to cut a radish, but not for hot foods. And this is the accepted custom, lechatchila. So this whole thing of taking the knife and shoving it in the earth, it's only in a rare case. The Sefer HaKashrut cites this method of the Shulchan Aruch as well, and notes that Rav Eliashiv offered an alternate method of achieving the same result without thrusting the knife into the ground. He said, when something needs me'itzah, one should clean the knife well, and then you pour boiling water on it. And this is in place of me'itzah, and that's the way that I normally recommend to people. If you need to do this, and there's a concern that something has become problematic, kashering with boiling water is a much better way than shoving it in the ground. Yes, Rubisa.
So I was wondering about something that, here's a scenario I'm thinking about. All right, you cut up onions with a parv knife.
Yes.
Then you saute them in a meat frying pan or a dairy frying pan, and you caramelize them. And then you put them in the food processor. So on that second knife, has it now become meat or dairy?
Okay,
Because
start again. I've used a parve knife, and now I'm sauteing it in a meat pot, the onions.
Mhm.
Okay, so now those onions are meaty.
Right, and then I'm putting them in the food processor, which is another blade.
Okay,
So does that blade then become meaty?
sounds like it.
And it said earlier that even if we went quickly through it, so I wasn't sure. It says even if the vessel is ben yoma or eno ben yoma.
So for Sfaradim, if it's for Ashkenazim, even if it's Eino Ben Yoma, hasn't been used for more than 24 hours. For Sfaradim, it's only an issue if the food processor had been used within the last 24 hours. Either way, it's going to explain the bottom line conclusion we're going to come up with is that we should be in a scenario where you have full parve utensils for cutting these types of things, or you use all the things in one stage. It's a meat knife with a meat pot and a meat food processor. And it's a dairy knife and a dairy pot and a dairy food processor. But trying to do this whole world, a system of I'm going to do parve with this and then use the meat, it can become a lot more challenging in creating that situation.
I have a question.
Yes, Sarah.
So in terms of, I guess I understood that if for some reason you mixed a knife of either dairy or meat, if it had a handle, there was no way to kosher it.
And correct. That's where that's coming through with the, if it has a handle, you can shove it in the ground 10 times. And Rav Eliashiv is saying, in that scenario, you could also use boiling water, although normally we would say no. In this case, it does work.
So you're saying that you can?
You can, yes.
With a handle?
You can, yeah.
Oh, because I always thought you could not.
Yes, this is the big chidush. That's the big thing, which is normally, this is one of those things which is whispered in rabbinic circles and not taught to everyone. Only in this case. It's a rare case. But as I said, it's one to check in with me on if you're planning on doing it. It's not one of those to just go on the fly.
Okay, and the handle is not important then in terms of...
That's what it's saying, and that's why it's saying that you can shove it in the earth 10 times might be a better option.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I recommend shoving in the earth 10 times, and sometimes the boiling water. It depends on the situation. So now I think we're going to finish off by talking about waiting before dairy after eating a Davar Charif cut with a meat knife. So if I say those onions are now meat, they're carne, they're fleischig, does that make it problematic? Do I have to wait 6 hours if I eat those meat onions? Okay? Yes or no? The Rama says, Mihu im ein basar b'tavshil. There's no meat in the pot. Reaction bashel b'kederasha basar. It was just cooked in a meat pot. Mutar lechol achrav givina. You can have dairy after it straight away. There's no need to wait 6 hours. Well, thank God for that. I was getting worried. And it seems, in my humble opinion, afilu b'shlo chometz decharif b'karashel basar dein bo yoma dein bo mishum nat barnat afilu hachi mutar lechol givina charav. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says as well that even if one cooks vinegar, which is sharp, in a meat pot where there is no more lenient ruling of nat barnat, even in that case, it's permitted to eat the cheese afterwards. And that's how the Sefer HaKashrut rules as well. The practical halacha, you don't need to wait 6 hours after eating carne onions or fleischig onions. Okay. Now, Rav Sternbach, and you often hear me quoting Rav Sternbach, but he quotes here in his Tshuvot V'Hanhagot, says that he recommends that people have specific knives as are parve or parve in order that onions or other types of davar charif are not rendered dairy or meat in any way. It says this, ולפי זה, כדי שלא יבואו לטעות ולהחליף, נראה שראוי ונכון להשתמש לצנון דברים חריפים בסכין פרווה דווקא. וכן מפורש במגן אברהם, שיש להיזהר לדבר חריף, שמשתמש בו עם חלב לחתכו רק בסכין פרווה. He says in order to avoid making mistakes and switching, it's proper and correct to specifically use a parv knife for radishes and other sharp foods. And this is explicit in Rav Gordema, in his Magen Avraham, that one should be careful to cut a davar charif to be used with dairy only with a parv knife and to avoid any issues. Okay? And he gives a little bit of a background there of who Rav Sternbach is, and you can read that on your leisure. Does the cutting surface affect the status of the davar charif? So what about the chopping board? Another common issue that arises regarding the davar charif pertains to the surface on which it is cut. If the davar charif is cut upon a dairy or meat surface, such as a plate or cutting board, does that impact the status of the food? According to the Chochmat Adam, the cutting surface is indeed significant. V'nireh li, dim chatach alav herring, I'm good at my Yiddish spellings there. Unrekas chamutzim, herring or pickles on it. Afilu di avad asur, even after the fact it's prohibited. The sakina v'churfa de maliach maflit min hakeli al kol panim b'makom hachatach. Because what happens is the sharpness of the knife and the sharpness of the food, the pressure of the knife and the sharpness of the food combine, and they would expel the flavor onto the cutting board. V'yaf sheshamati shemekinim baze, even though I've heard that there are people who are lenient in this matter, she'omrim dezeh lo have duchka, they consider there's not really pressure. Lo nireh li klal, I don't think that's true at all. There are others, such as Rav Moshe Tuvia Dinkel, who writes in his sefer called Davar Charif, that Rav Eliashiv rules leniently with this, that it's the knife which is important and not the cutting board. However, that's only b'diavad, and you can have a look at this one in more detail, but basically it says it's better to have a meat cutting board with a meat knife and a dairy cutting board with a dairy knife and a parv cutting board with a parv knife. Other practical questions concerning a davar charif. We can look at Rav Chaim Jachter, a contemporary posek who lives in the United States. He writes, as a practical rabbi will attest, questions regarding davar charif come up very often. The first is if an onion was cut by a clean eino ben yomo, as been used in the last 24-hour milk knife, and was subsequently cooked together with meat. Do we say that this food is forbidden mixture of meat and milk? Rav Feifel Kohen, a contemporary halachic authority, the Badei HaShulchan, cites two opinions regarding this issue. Two great achronim, the Chochmat Adam and the Pri Megadim, rule that this food constitutes a forbidden mixture of milk and meat and must be discarded. However, the Beit Meir rules that three lenient opinions of the Rishonim may be combined to rule that this food is permitted. Number one, the opinion that only a radish has the rule of davar charif. Number two, and not all other spicy foods, that the rule of nat bar nat applies even to a davar charif. And number three, that the rule of davar charif does not apply when the knife is eino ben yomo, which is relying on the Sephardic position of the Shulchan Aruch. One should consult his rabbi should such a situation arrive. The second case, and again, what he's explaining here is only for the Ashkenazic position. If it's eino ben yomo, if you're Sephardic, there's no real issue. It's only the ben yomo scenario. The second case, says Rav Jachter, is if an onion was cut by a meat or milk knife and subsequently placed in a parv blender. Rabisa, let's see what he says. Is the blender no longer considered parv? Oh, I might be in trouble here. Why did I record this and put it on Facebook? The issue is vigorously debated by the Achronim. The Magen Avraham argues that since the rule of nat bar nat does not apply to a davar charif, then a parv utensil that cut the onion becomes meaty. The Even HaEzer disagrees. Even HaEzer disagrees. He asserts that the parv utensil that cut an onion subsequent to it being cut with a meat knife remains parv because it's nat bar nat. The davar charif itself is an exception to the rule of nat bar nat, but not a utensil that absorbs meat or milk taste. Rav Feifel Kohen in his Badei HaShulchan rules that in case of need, one may rule leniently in light of the fact that some Rishonim believe that the rule of nat bar nat applies even to the Davar Charif itself. So he's giving a more lenient ruling. Now, the problem is here that Rabbi said that wasn't your question. Your question was, I take a knife, parv, cut the onion, and then I saute it. Once I've sauteed those onions in a meat pot, those onions are meat. So once then it goes into the blender, it's meat. Okay, so I think, Rabisa, I might be having to buy you a second blender. A red and a blue blenders are coming to our house. You heard it here first on the halacha class. It's always fun when the rabbi doesn't know what the Rabisa is doing in the kitchen. Always great. And here you go. You can see all these summaries of all these positions. And I'm going to close that off. Closing this off. Here we go. Moving that on. The Rabisa has a question. She thinks I'm wrong. Here we go.
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. So I joined the class 3 minutes late. Did we go through a list of what food qualifies as Davar Charif?
Yes. So onions, garlic, spices, radishes, we had it there. Smoked fish, herring, pickles, all those types of things.
So no fruits?
No fruits.
So lemon and pineapple don't make the Davar Charif.
lemons would be a problem, yeah. But
what
not
about cabbage? Is cabbage included?
Cabbage is fine.
Even if it's spicy?
A cabbage?
Like kimchi.
So then it's vinegar. And
then it's a pickle. There's pickled cabbage. So then it'd be anything pickled would be a problem.
But harissa, for instance, and schug would fall in the category, of course.
Schug, yeah, because it's spices. Yeah.
Right. Harissa is the same thing. It's just
Nachon.
It's tomato.
So here, what we have to be careful of, again, it might be that if you're trying to do what the Rabisa is suggesting of this multi-stage cooking process, which is cutting. I mean, the case what he's talking about, where you're cutting it first and then putting in the food processor, that's easy. It's straightforward. And I can be lenient with it. But if I'm cutting it, then sauteing it, and then putting in the food processor, I think you've got a problem.
The biggest problem I have is when you open up the schug thing and you take a knife or something or a spoon to dish it out of there. That's when I stop and I think about this halakha.
Yeah, because it goes straight up the nose, and it goes right up there.
No. So that's when I only take a part of, utensil in order.
But you got the same issue with anything you're using, onions, garlic, anything you're cutting.
Of course.
Yeah.
I get it. No, I get that.
Schug, I'm not so worried about, because schug, I'm going to use a spoon. I'm going to take a meat spoon out. I'm going to put it on the table. Are you talking about you're going to make your own schug?
No. I'm not that good.
As a proud Moroccan, I'd expect you to make your own schug.
No. See, as a proud Moroccan, I don't even talk about schug. I talk about salada matbucha. I talk about harissa. That's where we stop. The schug stuff, that's for the Yemenites.
There you go.
That's of us.
Amen. All right.